welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Vaishali Kohli. While nearly half of India's oil supplies face risk of disruption as tensions in the Middle East escalate, the country has enough buffer to meet its energy demands if the conflict is prolonged, analysts say. In an escalation scenario, the first impact is likely price-driven higher Brent, freight and insurance costs rather than an immediate volume shock, data and analytics firm Kpler said. Based on reports, commercial crude stocks are around 100 million barrels, including SPR held in strategic reserves at Mangalore, Padur and Visakhapatnam. India is likely to be impacted majorly if the Strait of Hormuz is shut. But what about India's current oil reserves? How much oil do they have? How long can they sustain? Let's take a look. Let me show you that, viewers. Now, India's oil reserves. Crude oil imports were about 5.2 million barrels per day and import dependency is 85 to 89% of consumption. That's, of course, India's oil reserves. Let's talk about the daily consumption at 5.5 million barrels per day. Oil imported from the Middle East at 2.74 million barrels per day. So we're talking about the daily consumption and the oil imported from Middle East. The current reserves are 74 days. The total coverage includes strategic petroleum reserves, refinery stocks, floating storage and products. Those are the list. That's a current reserve list. Now, of course, strategic crude oil reserves. We're talking about Mangalore, which is 10 to 11 million barrels there. Padur is 7 to 18 million barrels and Visakhapatnam is 9 million barrels, viewers. Now we're talking about the commercial refinery stocks in Mundra, Vadinar, Jamnagar, Mumbai, Mangalore, Kochi, Visakhapatnam and Paradip. This is where India's oil reserves are located. Mundra, Vadinar, Jamnagar, this is where the floating storage is located. So these are the areas of the floating storage in Mundra, Vadinar, Mumbai, Jamnagar and Kochi as well. All right, viewers, so this is an overview of where really the oil reserves are in India and what we're at, the situation that we're in currently. So, of course, now I'm going to be joined by my colleague Rumi Mishra. She's going to tell us more. Rumi, what more can you tell us?
Yes, Vaishali, of course, we know that the war has been raging on in the Middle East, with not just Iran, Israel and the US being the powers at play. Now, of course, Hezbollah has joined this war. Iran has, of course, launched a barrage of missiles on, of course, its neighboring countries, including UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain. So, yes, there's high chances of the Strait of Hormuz being shut. However, Iran has not yet done it. They have said that they're not going to shut the Strait of Hormuz, but oil tankers and containers have already just stopped moving just in case an escalation happens. We'll take a look at our current oil reserves in that case, trying to understand what might happen and how much oil India already has. Of course, on a usual basis, we import 5.2 million barrels per day of crude oil. So our import dependency is up from 85 to 89%. 85 to 89% of the oil that we consume per day is imported from outside and not taken out from Indian soil. If we take a look at our daily consumption, it's 5.5 million barrels per day. Of course, we have a lot of, we depend on oil for most of our energy needs. The oil imported from the Middle East, this is of course the oil that will pass the Strait of Hormuz, which if they want, Iran can definitely choke. This is the choke point that is of course very, very crucial, especially when we're talking about importing oil from Middle East countries. That is 2.74 million barrels per day, which is around 55% of our daily consumption. which is of course a very, very high number. However, our current reserves, according to the Energy Minister, is 74 days of total coverage. So if we cannot, of course, get oil from those areas, from the Strait of Hormuz, we can sustain ourselves for the next 74 days. Our energy, petrochemical needs are going to be fulfilled. This, of course, includes the strategic petroleum reserves that we have in Visakhapatnam, in Mangalore. It also includes the refinery stocks of the commercial refineries that we have. Remember, there's one in Jamnagar, there's one in Munnar as well. Then there's floating storage and products, which of course is close to the coast. We have floating storage of crude oil as well on the coast, very close to India, that we keep just in case. Let's look at this whole entire scenario in a map format. We have Visakhapatnam right here marked on our screens. This right here is where 9 million barrels, of oil is kept. This is India's strategic crude oil reserve. This is where we get oil from as well. This is Padur again. It's close to the Vellore Fort in Tamil Nadu. It's got 17 to 18 million barrels of oil. Crude oil is what I'm talking about, of course. And then there's Mangalore, which has 10 to 11 million barrels of oil. Let's take a look at our commercial and refinery stocks. We have one at Paradip, we have one at Visakhapatnam, we have one at Mangalore, there's one at Kochi as well, there's one in Mumbai, Jamnagar, Mundra, Vadinagar. All these places in Gujarat as well have commercial refineries of oil. Remember, Jamnagar is purported to be the world's biggest oil refinery. It has the world's highest capabilities as of now, and it is the only refinery in India that can refine sweet crude oil that of course Venezuela usually produces. Then we take a look at our floating storages. There's one close to off the coast of Mumbai. There's another off the coast of Kochi. There's one close to Jamnagar, Vadinagar and Mundra as well. There's one in Visakhapatnam, but it's not confirmed yet, so we cannot really speak about it. We don't know of the exact numbers of these floating storages, of course, Vaishali. These are very informations that are not usually shared with people. But yes, according to the Energy Minister, if we go by what he has said, we can sustain ourselves for the next 74 days, even if this war escalates further and the Strait of Hormuz is closed for further time. Over to you.
Dr. Sharad Kohli is now joining me. He's a senior economist. Dr. Kohli, we're of course seeing... Am I audible to you, Dr. Kohli? Just want to check.
Vaishali, you're audible?
Yes, Dr. Kohli. We, we were discussing earlier, I was discussing with my other panelists on the broadcast that, ripple effects will be felt across the world after what's happened, and war really isn't the solution. And now we're seeing the first effect of it that's coming to India. What would you like to say on the fact that this will affect our oil supply?
Good afternoon, Vaishali, to you and the viewers. I think with about 2.5 months of stock already with us, there is no reason to be fretting immediately. However, because the war possibilities appear to be quite uncertain, we don't know if this war is going to expand. We also don't know if this war is going to drag on for a rather long time. So therefore, closure of Strait of Hormuz, from where almost half of our oil comes in, it does create a matter of concern. But the fact that we've got 2.5 months of oil with us, I think is a bit relieving. So we don't need to worry immediately. And even if, even if it closes down for longer, since only half of our oil comes from there, the impact would be on the whole world, not just India. China also takes a substantial amount of oil from that route. The other half of oil which we take from other areas, for example Venezuela, and by the way, I'd like to correct the report which was being submitted. From Venezuela we take the WTI category oil, not the sweet oil, because WTI oil is harder and is a little difficult to refine, a little expensive to refine also. That's called the Western Texas Intermediate. That's the category of oil that we take from Venezuela. So we may have to take more oil from the other sources and take a little slightly longer route. Now, longer route means it will be a bit of a double whammy on us, because we've got to buy it expensive because of the crude oil prices going up. And of course, there will be the shipping and the insurance costs will be more. because oil will be traveling more, reaching us longer. So I really don't think there's going to be any major concern, because America is quite prepared. Because of Venezuela takeover, America will be in a position to supply oil if that is needed, and that's what America wanted, actually, if you ask me. The whole tariff war going on, or the whole tariff dialogue going on between India and America was, after all, about the Russian oil, and most of the Russian oil comes to us from the Strait of Hormuz. So I think India is in a pretty decent position. However, war is not good for anyone. We all agree to that. War must end soon, and if it drags on for longer, I think there will be some problems. There will be pressure on rupee, dollar will become stronger. Some inflationary pressure will come on our economy, but the good part, Vaishali, is that we are in a very sweet spot as of now. Our inflation is not exceptionally high. It is barely above 2%. So we can afford to probably give away another 100 basis points or 200 basis points. Even then we'll be within the range of the RBI's, acceptable limit. So I really don't think there is any reason for concern. But a lot of, including the Middle East and the Western world, must be worried at this point of time, Vaishali.
And Dr. Kohli, if the Brent spikes sharply, which is of course the crude oil which is widely used to produce fuel for cars, how soon do you think consumers will see the price impact at the petrol pump perhaps, and then could the government, if that happens, absorb some of the shock through tax adjustments or subsidies?
Well, I think till about $100, it is right now at $77, $78 per barrel. Till about, I would say, $95 to $100, I really don't think government is going to really pass on the burden to the consumers. There are 5 elections this year. It's going to be a very unpopulist kind of a measure also later this year, because oil increase has got a cascading effect on other items as well. It's a means of transportation, and it hurts the budgets of households. So I think that is a bit of a far-fetched thought as of now, unless, of course, something very drastic and bad happens to the war, and there is a desperate shortage of oil. Well, we should not forget that most of the countries which have been hit by Iran, they are not supporting Iran. They are as much impacted by Iran. So I'm sure that the way flights started from Dubai and Abu Dhabi, despite the fact that missiles are still being fired on UAE, but I think Dubai and Abu Dhabi airports took a bold step of making the planes take off. So likewise, if there is a situation where Strait of Hormuz remains closed for a longer time, I'm sure these Middle East countries will find the longer route to at least start the supply of oil. And OPEC can always come in and sort of extend the production also, increase the production and to stabilize the prices. So I think because Iran is, if you see honestly, at this point of time, Iran is all alone in this war. So there's other nations versus Iran. So unless, of course, China and Russia jump into this war, then, of course, things will get complicated. It might convert to a world war. And, of course, if Europe jumps in, things will get complicated. But as of now, yes, we can anticipate trouble, but not as much trouble for India, I would say. We've got a decent amount of forex reserves as well, $700 billion plus of forex reserves. Well, there will be a bit of a pressure on the rupee, but not a major concern for now, Vaishali. As an economic analyst, I can tell you.
Dr. Kohli, thank you for joining me. And now a massive explosion